Hi, my name is Christine Norick, and I represent the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center, which is part of the Illinois Adult Education Professional Development Network. And today's lesson is about probability concepts in healthcare. In this lesson, when I talk about documents, you can always find links to the math worksheets in the description, and the answer keys there as well. We're going to start with a story of a woman named Amina. And Amina was 36 weeks pregnant, and she went into her doctor for a visit, and they told her that she needed to have her baby early. And so, with the doctor's help, she delivered her baby girl. She was healthy, doing well, and she was born premature or early. And they gave the baby to Amina, and she was so thrilled. And she looked at her baby girl and thought, wow, what beautiful blue eyes my baby has. And the nurse there said, yeah, I've delivered a lot of babies early this year, but I really haven't seen as many with such blue eyes as your baby has. And Amina said to the doctor, well, what are the chances that my baby would be born early and have blue eyes? And this is what we're going to be talking about in our lesson is what are the chances or what's the probability of two things happening at the same time in the healthcare field? And I want you to take a minute, maybe think about your own experience, maybe your family or friends, and some of the health conversations you've had with your doctor, and what impact would it have on you if you knew what the chances of maybe having a certain condition are or having a certain illness? What's the probability of that happening to you or someone you know, whether it's a good thing or something you're worried about? What impact might that have on you to know that information? Well, before we get into the math, I would like to start with some vocabulary. And I'm going to read through the words and then the definition. So the first is probability. Then we have pediatrics, premature, strep throat, geriatrics, and diabetes. So probability is the chances of an action or an event happening. Pediatrics is the branch of medicine that's concerned with caring for babies and children. Premature means being born before the 37th week of a mother's pregnancy. Strep throat is an illness that is characterized by having a very sore throat and a fever. Geriatrics is the branch of medicine concerned with caring for older or aged people. And diabetes is a disease where a person's body is unable to use or produce insulin to manage the body's sugar levels. We have a few more words: eczema, hypertension, arthritis, and obese. Eczema is a skin condition that causes rough patches and itching. Hypertension means high blood pressure. Arthritis is swelling and pain in the joints. And obese is having a high and unhealthy amount of body fat. You can always go back and pause the video to listen to the words again. You can kind of practice saying them, pronouncing them, maybe write them down to practice spelling. But you can also use this QR code. You can take out your phone, scan the code, and practice the words in a quiz mode, in a matching game, until you're familiar. You'll be seeing these words in the lesson here in the video and also in the problems on the worksheet. So make sure that you're comfortable with the words. When you feel ready to move on, let's start talking about probability. So you can think about probability on this line. At the far end of the line is zero, and at the other end of the line, you have the number one. Now, zero means 0% chance or not possible at all. So humans who grow wings and fly to the moon, that's not possible, right? It's zero probability. But on the other side, there's the number one that represents 100% chance or completely certain. So we are completely certain that every living thing will one day die, right? All the way. So we know that some things fall along this line in different places. There might be some things that are possible, but not very likely. And there might be some things that are very likely or very possible that they'll happen and they'll be farther on the line. And so what we're looking at today is what do we do when we have two things on this line of probability and we want to know, well, what is the probability that both are true at the same time? So let's go ahead and go back to Amina's story in pediatrics. And remember, pediatrics is all about the field of medical study working with children and babies. So we know that some babies are born with blue eyes and some babies are born premature. And so from the American Academy of Pediatrics, we know that 20.8% of babies are born with blue eyes each year, and 10.5% of babies are born premature each year. What is the probability of a baby like Amina's being born both with blue eyes and premature? Okay. We can think of it and look at it this way on this diagram. With our circles, we know 20.8% of babies are born with blue eyes and 10.5% of babies are born premature. So, what happens? How do we figure out babies born with blue eyes and premature? And we're going to be using the probability multiplication rule. This is all about two events that are separate from each other, right? So somebody can be born with blue eyes and somebody can be born premature. They can be separate events. So this is the equation that we have below. And I'll go through what each thing means. We have the letter P here stands for the probability of. Event number A right here is our blue eyes in our example. The letter B is premature in our example. So this equation really means to know the probability of a baby born with blue eyes and premature, we have to take the probability of a baby being born with blue eyes and multiply it by the probability of a baby being born premature. We have to take both of those probabilities and multiply them together. So we're going to start with the 20.8% and the 10.5%, right? We're going to take 20.8% multiplied by 10.5%. Now, it might feel like you should take these numbers and just multiply them right away. 20.8 times 10.5, right? Well, if we do that, we get this answer, 218.4. That's not correct. That's a really weird answer to look at in a percentage, right? Because we know that percent is out of 100, so we can't have a 200%. So what we have to do is, since we know that every percentage is out of 100, we have to divide by 100 and change this number from a percentage to a decimal form. So we can divide by 100, or a simpler way of doing that is really just taking this decimal point and moving it two places to the left. And you get 0.208. We can do that again with 10.5, move it two places to the left, and we get 0.105. Okay, now we have two numbers in decimal form that we can multiply together, and we get 0.02184, which is also kind of a weird number. We want it to be in a percent form, right? We want to understand what the percentage is that this could happen. So to do that, we have to move the decimal back to the right and change this number into a percentage again. When we do that, we get 2.284%. So the probability of a baby being born with blue eyes and premature is 2.284%. Let's take a look at one more example in geriatrics, which is the field of medical study working with older adults. Right now, we have about 75% of US adults aged 65 to 80 with some type of heart disease, and about 25% of US adults aged 65 to 80 with diabetes. So, what is the probability of a United States adult aged 65 to 80 having both heart disease and diabetes? Again, we can look at this on our diagram, and we can see both of the percentages. And we're trying to find what happens if somebody has, what's the probability of somebody having both of these conditions. We're going to use the same multiplication rule, but in this example, event number A stands for heart disease and B stands for diabetes. So to find the probability of a US adult age 65 to 80 with heart disease and diabetes, we have to multiply the probability of an adult with heart disease and the probability of an adult with diabetes. We have to multiply those two probabilities together. So remember, we have a 75% probability of an adult with heart disease, but we have to change this into a decimal. So we're going to move that over and make it 0.75. And we'll do the same thing for the probability of an adult with diabetes, which is 25%, and make it 0.25. When we multiply those numbers together, we get 0.1875, and we need to change that back into a percentage by moving the decimal back to the right. When we do that, our answer is 18.75%. So the probability of an adult age 65 to 80 in the United States of having both heart disease and diabetes is 18.75%. Okay, if you feel comfortable, you're going to take a turn now to work on some problems. You can always go back and watch the video again if you need to pause and listen and think through the problems a little more. If you're ready, you're going to do the first, we're going to do 5 problems. So here's the first 3 problems. You can pause the video if you need. And here's numbers 4 and 5. When you're finished, we're going to go over the answer to number 1 together. You can find the answer to all of these in a document linked in the description. So number 1 says, a recent study by the American Pediatrics Association showed that 45% of children under the age of 3 years old are likely to get ear infections, while 20% are likely to get strep throat. What is the probability that a child under the age of 3 will have both an ear infection and strep throat? So we're going to multiply 45% or 0.45 by 20% or 0.20, and that gives us 9%. 9% probability or chance that a child will have both ear infections and strep throat. Again, you can find all of the answers in the answer document linked below. Before we finish today's lesson, I just have 2 questions I want you to reflect on. You can write them in your journal if you want, or talk to someone you know about them. But since we're talking about this in the healthcare field, we need to know the importance of this type of math. Why do we do this, and how does this help somebody in the healthcare field? So the first question, why do health professionals need to know the probabilities of events like those mentioned in this lesson? And the second question is, how will this knowledge help them when dealing with patients? What effect does that have on the patient and provider relationship? So think about those, take some time to maybe write and jot down some thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you would like more information, there's a link to a video with more practice about probability in general. And I hope this has been helpful for you thinking about this in terms of the healthcare field. Thank you.